Welcome to IAYTD. I just watched all 13 episodes of Iron Fist back to back. I am tired, but it's time to talk about it. I want to get my thoughts out there so that you have someone to talk about this with. If you want a spoiler-free review, down in the comments, I've pinned my written review you can scope out. But this is going to dive into spoilers and what we liked and what we didn't like about Iron Fist. So you have about 3, 2, 1, we're getting into spoilers. So I want to start with this. If you really liked Iron Fist, that's great, okay? I don't mind when people like things that I don't necessarily like. So people would say, I really like Batman v Superman. I really like Suicide Squad. I really liked whatever. That's great because I want people to get enjoyment from those. So if you liked Iron Fist a lot, don't take any of this personally. That's awesome that you like it. But I did not like it so much. I gave it a 3 out of 5 because I thought it was pretty average. And average, unfortunately, is the worst for me out of the Netflix Marvel shows. I would put this last. It just didn't deliver in a lot of the ways that the other shows did. So let's dive into some details. The biggest problem I had was that the show was slow and the story was like kind of nonsensical. They introduced a lot of villains, and so no single villain really got a lot of screen time, except for the Meachums, the family, and I did not like them at all. I found their stories to be annoying, and they tried to make them somewhat empathetic at times. In the first episode, Danny says something, he's like, you put me in a freezer, you kicked me in the groin, stuff like that, and it's hard to then empathize with that character later when you're like, they are a horrible, evil person, so why should I care? And so they tried to make them empathetic, no. But as villains, they were super over the top. And I just wasn't interested in any of the, we got kicked out of the business, all that stuff, did not like. And then there were other villains that got rotated in, some for like an episode, some for smaller arcs. None of them really resonated with me aside from Madame Gao, only because we're interested in her because of Daredevil. That's kind of been set up already. And so we're like, what's going to happen here? But every other villain that kind of popped in, I was like, I don't care about this. Which is a bummer considering we got Kingpin, Kilgrave. Even the Punisher was basically the villain of that part of Daredevil. Like, we've got some great villains. And here, just didn't happen for me. So another reason this felt slow to me is that the action took way too long to happen. You know, we see this as a martial arts series, and it really took Iron Fist about 4 episodes to get into his first good fight. And that's way too long. People are going to drop an episode or 2 in because it's so slow. Yes, it picks up. The second half of the season is awesome. There's some great fight scenes. The fight choreography gets better. So it picks up. But it starts out rare and not always stellar. The choreography for some of these fights is like Daredevil was better. You know, even in general, I can't think of a fight scene that is more, I want to say, significant or memorable than what we saw in Daredevil. You know, those hallway fight scenes, those one takes. We didn't really get anything that impressionable here. And I think that's a weird thing. For a show about a martial arts superhero, that should be like, the fights were incredible. Remember when this happened, remember when this happened. And I just don't, the stuff didn't really stick with me. But let's talk about Colleen. Colleen Wing is a badass. And she carried the show at the beginning when Iron Fist wasn't doing much. So her fight sequences and like that Fight Club kind of thing were awesome. And she is a total badass, stole the show. Will be a fan favorite after this. In general, I also felt like Iron Fist didn't have the identity that the other series had. Daredevil, Jessica Jones, and Luke Cage all felt fairly unique. You know, they had kind of their own little style. Their fight sequences were different. But this show feels like Daredevil. It feels like it takes place in Daredevil. This is a Daredevil show. It looks that way. There's a lot of similar tropes that have happened in the other shows. You know, so things like the surprise kill. You know, we saw in Luke Cage when Cottonmouth was killed, and we see it here when Ward kills his father. And you're like, oh my God. And of course he comes back, but that felt very familiar. It's even in the same episode at the same time as Luke Cage. We also get a very similar little arc where our hero's powers are negated or they become vulnerable to something. So there's like an arc where it's like they're now in more danger than ever. You know, in Daredevil, they mess with his radar sense, you can call it. And so he wasn't able to pick up on stuff. So he's now in danger. In Luke Cage, they found the bullets that could pierce his skin. So now he's just like us. And here, all of a sudden, it was like he can't harness his chi for whatever reason. It was not aligned right. I forget what the explanation was. But overall, this just felt like the other shows. It didn't have an identity unto itself. It also suffered from not maybe having the budget that it needed to do the job. There were a lot of things that we should have seen, but I don't think they could afford to show. So in the other series, we got to see significant flashbacks of how they got their powers, what led up to this. And so I was expecting that here. I was expecting here's going to be an episode or multiple episodes where we see him training and learning, and we see all these people that he's been talking about. And instead, we get little glimpses of them standing in the snow or entering a cave, but they never show the city. They can't show the dragon. You know, there's a lot of things they can't show because of the budget. I also think the budget affected some of the locations. You know, for some reason they go to China in an episode, and China looks just like New York City. So I feel like the budget hindered what they were able to do. In these smaller shows like Daredevil and Luke Cage that are here and very intimate, it worked. But Iron Fist is magical and fantastical, and they weren't able to give us that because of the budget. So overall, I thought it was just a bit of a misstep. I thought it was fairly average. Some parts were not good at all. The villains were not impressive. There was too much going on, and it just felt familiar. It didn't have anything new or fresh or unique to offer. So I gave it a 3 out of 5. What did you like and what didn't you like about Iron Fist? Let me know in the comments. If you loved it, that's great. Tell me why. If you did not love it, tell me that too. So let's talk.